My name is Ellen Oakes, and I am a Vice President of the League of Women Voters Greater Chippewa Valley. And I too want to welcome you all here. This is a great turnout for our school board forum. We have all 6 candidates here tonight that you can hear talking and answering your questions. There are a lot more of you, and I'm sure with a lot more questions than we have time for. That's why we do have to time the candidates so they can't talk too long. Any candidate can answer any of the questions that you turn in. And I know that some of you will be asking questions similar. You have similar interests. That's why we have screeners up here so they can say, oh, this is pretty much the same question, and make up like a pile of them and pick the one that says it most clearly and give that to me to read out. So your question will get asked, but maybe not quite in the words you put down. I hope that's fair. Now these people are going to do a little fruit basket upset for me, because I just had them draw numbers out of a basket, and I want whoever is number 1 to sit here, and you'll have to take your sign with you, Urs. And then number 2, and then number 3, and 4, 5, 6. That way, we can vary the order of where we start from when we're answering questions, so it's more fair. So we have Clint Moses, and Urs Haltener, and Nell Hoffner Johnson, David Steyer, Chris Freeman, and Bayard Godsave. And those are your 6 candidates. I think it's terrific that we have such interest in the Thank you. Okay, now number 1 gets to speak first to introduce himself to you, and that's how the order will start now. And at the end, everyone will have a closing statement, and number 6 will start and come this way. Okay? Let's give a microphone to Clint. Is it on?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Yep.
I do think this might have been rigged, so don't start the timer yet, but I want to check into that box, because they were all ones that I drew from there. But, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Dr. Clint Moses. I'm excited to be running for school board in my own hometown. That's right, you're looking at the product of Menomonie Public Schools sitting right here. So with that, my dad was a teacher, along with the dairy farmer as well. My mom actually was a school counselor and a social worker for Dunn County for a number of years. Been happily retired for a while. She was actually the founder of the Community Support Program, the CSP program, along with many others that assist people living in our community with long-term mental illness. Myself, after I went away to school for a while, I moved back here in 2003 and opened Red Cedar Chiropractic to serve the people of all backgrounds in our area surrounding Menomonie that want either pain relief or just a healthier lifestyle. I live in the Menomonie Township on a small farm with my wife Nora and 4 daughters. This year I have 1 in 4K, 2nd grade at Wakanda, 6 at the middle school, and a freshman at the high school. So I really have each stage of child development really covered right now, especially on the girls' side. So I hope I get some sympathy votes for that as well. I've served on numerous boards, including church, Boy Scouts, the Colfax Nursing Home, Rotary Board, and past Rotary Board President, the Dunn County Community Foundation, where I'm currently the board chair. If you don't know, the Dunn County Community Foundation is our county's best kept secret. So if you don't know about that, talk to me after the meeting. I'm very passionate about the foundation. Connects people that care with causes that matter. In my professional life as a chiropractor, I often have to put aside my personal beliefs, accept the personal decisions my patients make, and continue to do what's best for their health. I see the school board as a very similar situation. I will have my personal beliefs, and they may differ from other board members and other people in the community, but we need to come together, find solutions that are best benefit for our school system and ultimately our children. I have the experience and passion for excellence that this board and our school district needs at the moment. I have an experience for bringing people together to come to a common goal And from the outside, it seems that that is what this board really needs right now. I would be honored to serve on your board and give back to my community. Thanks again for coming tonight.
Thank you, Clint Moses. Now we will go on to Urs Haltener.
Hi, my name is Urs Haltener. Yep, URS, that's all they wrote. You might wonder what that's all about. I am a naturalized American citizen. I'm by nature, or by birth, I'm a Swiss mountain boy, to be perfectly honest. I come from Merrill, Wisconsin. So I've raised my two daughters entirely here in Menomonie, Wisconsin. So they are a product of the Menomonie Area School District.
Can you hear him?
I guess I start yodeling if I have to. So like I said, I come out of the farm. I used to be a dairy farmer with the family farm. I moved into farm equipment sales. I have then moved into teaching and learning. As a matter of fact, I'm a UW-style graduate with a business and marketing degree. Taught at Kimberly High School, taught at DC Everest High School. So I'm quite invested in teaching and learning to a great extent. I later moved to UW-Stout, became a teacher educator, specifically within the career and workforce development type of educational venues. For example, business marketing educators, technology educators, family and consumer science educators, ag educators, that sphere of my profession. So I am a teacher educator by nature, passionate about the world. You might guess that I've traveled fairly extensively. My parents were absolutely insistent that we leave, that we travel. That was an investment in us. As a matter of fact, we learned English as 5-, 6-, and 7-year-olds in Merrill, Wisconsin, and moved back to Switzerland and came back later. So I live out near Hoffman Hills. You might say I have a farm out there. No, it certainly looks like one, because my daughters left us with the horses, so I get to do haying and feeding and all of those things. Deeply passionate about the future of our nation, quite honestly, and human resource development, and specifically what the contribution is of the PK-12 system. I will actually suggest that the U.S. PK-12 system is the best kept secret. We're very hard on it, but comparing it to my Swiss cousins and my Swiss sisters' kids, this is a great system. Thanks.
Thank you, Urs Haltener. Now, Nell Hefner-Johnson.
Hi, everybody. Everybody can hear me because I just turned it on. Can you? Okay.
Yep. Is that carrying? A little closer.
A little closer. Okay. First of all, thank you all so much for coming out, and thanks to the League of Women Voters for organizing this event. I think it's so important that we're informing our voters, and I really am energized by the size of this group here, and am just so thankful that you're coming out to taking your time to learn more about the candidates. My name, as Ellen said, is Nell Hefner-Johnson, and like Clint, I also was born and raised in Menomonie, attended public schools here, obviously. My mom graduated from Menomonie High School. She grew up on a farm just east of town here. They're sitting in the front row. I'm going to try not to look at them so they don't make me laugh. And my dad grew up just in Boyceville, and he was a teacher and principal in the school district of Menomonie for 30 years. So I don't remember a time that I wasn't passionate about learning. I have always loved to learn, and that passion for learning, I think, evolved as I grew older into not just a passion for generalized learning, but a passion for education. And I think that that is derived from the fact that I believe that education can change the world. And I don't say that lightly. I think it can be monumental and effective and be a really great positive agent of change. And so I think it is important to invest our time and our energy in education. And I think that communities that have good public schools have healthy communities. And I think that those healthy communities then can become healthy regions, and those healthy regions can become healthy states, and those healthy states can become healthy nations. And it really can grow to be this positive force in the whole world. And that might sound really esoteric, but it's real, and I believe it. I believe it as a tangible fact that we can look at and see data about that. After I left Menomonie, I went on and got my undergraduate degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So I did sneak out of town for a little while, and immediately after getting my bachelor's from Madison, I went on to get my master's in teaching at the University of River Falls. So I also have some background in education and in child development. And so I'm here on this board because I'm an advocate for public schools. And I want to be an advocate for the students in our public schools. And I want to be an advocate for the teachers in our public schools. Because I think being an advocate of those things makes me an advocate of our community. And so that's why I'm here. Those are my primary motivations, and I'm really excited to be amongst good company who feels likewise passionate about education, and I'm humbled by that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Noll Hoffner Johnson. Now we'll hear from David Steyer.
Thank you. My name is Dave Steyer. I am a Menomonie resident. My wife is Karen Steyer. We live out about 10 miles southwest of Menomonie here. Our family owns and operates Elf-Lawn Farm, so some of you may have been there on tours and things like that. We also have 4 children that are currently in the district or through the district. Our oldest is currently a second-year med student at Madison. Our second daughter, Krista, is at the U of M. She'll be a senior graduating in May. And then we have a son, Brian, who's a junior in high school, and our youngest son, Brian, Ben, who's a junior in high school, Brian, who's in 7th grade. And very proud of the kids, and they've had education all through Menomonie here. Everything that they've done and learned has been through the school system. So talk a little bit about why I first ran for the school board. I've been on the board for 6 years here, start in next month, and originally got involved in it when back in 2013 they were talking about closing down Downsville School. And so a lot of the parents and community members in our area got together, and I started attending a lot of school board meetings, and as I did, I became very interested in how the board operates and the inner workings of things that go on inside the district with the administration. And so through that whole process, when I first got on, we had a $36 million referendum that was approved. And at that time, we remodeled the high school and River Heights and some of the other schools, did quite a bit of work at Downsville as well. And I was proud to work and serve on the Building and Grounds Committee. I was able to, one of the things that the referendum did not include was a third bay at the high school, the mezzanine up above, some extra storage area, and a community service building, or the community service entrance for the pool and field house. But through some very good fiscal management of the board and our building and grounds director, we were able to get all those projects done and still finish the referendum on time and on budget. So very proud of some of the work that we've done with that. I also want to talk about some of the history of the district. When I first got on, the OPEB liabilities of this district were somewhere between $25 and $30 million. And that was money that was due to teachers as they retire and things. And so we were facing a very uphill battle, but through some work with the teachers and things, we're able to reduce that. Currently, that stands at about $12 million, and we have about $5 million in Fund 73 that can be put towards that fund as well. And there's a lot of other things I don't have the time to go into right now, but I just want to say how proud I am of this community. The fact that on our state scorecard, we just scored exceeding expectations again, and have done very well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dave Steyer. Now we'll hear from Chris Freeman.
Hi everybody, my name is Chris Freeman, and I'm not from Menomonie. I'm not even from Wisconsin. I'm from a little place that I call Wisconsin East. It's called New Hampshire. It's very rural, it's very conservative, and we also deeply value education. We make do with smaller budgets, and we deliver surpassing education because we've got caring people that understand how we make education work for students. I've been in Menomonie for almost 10 years now, and I'm not going anywhere. This is where we've kind of made our claim. My wife is Sarah. She just started a flower shop in town, Hive and Hollow, and we grow flowers for the flower shop at our little home out in the township of Menomonie. I've got 2 boys, and they are in middle school and in grade school, and they're why I'm here. Urs and I share something in common. We both lost last year. That's kind of, it's hard to come back after that, you know, because I won one night to lose the next night. And that was hard on my kids, and it was hard on our family. But the boys would said, you have to run, Papa. You have to win this time. So, that's why I'm here. I guess I can tell you a little bit about myself. I feel that I'm one of the best qualified people to fulfill our motto of our school district that often gets left beside the discussion. So let me just tell you what that is. The Menomonie School District is dedicated to preparing students to becoming lifelong learners. That's lifelong learners. Caring individuals. Responsible citizens. All right? In terms of becoming lifelong learners, I understand how education works. I won the Outstanding Teacher Award at Stout in 2014, and in 2016, and in 2018. And I am Stout's nomination for the System Award in 2019. I understand how learning works, and I deeply care about my students. It's important that they understand the consequences of becoming lifelong learners, because they're going to have 15 to 20 jobs before they retire. They have to be flexible. 2, it's exceptionally important that they become caring individuals, understanding that education is an act of empathy. I teach peace studies. I teach kids how to care about learning, and I teach kids how to care about themselves. They also need to become responsible citizens. And I began the Stout Votes campaign. I get students out. I don't care who they're voting for. I want them voting. We upped our voting output by 33%. And I think I can fulfill those 3 aspects of our mission.
End of sentence. Thank you, Chris Freeman. And finally, we have Bayard Godsave.
Hello, my name is Bayard Godsave. I don't know how both East Coasters ended up on this side of the table, but like Chris, I'm not originally from here. I'm originally from the western part of New York State, and the story of how I got to Menomonie, Wisconsin is too long for 3 minutes, but we'll just say I fell in love with a girl from Wisconsin, and so I'm here. My wife Sarah and I, we have 2 little girls in the district. Our daughter Inga is 6, she's at Oaklawn. Our daughter Harriet, she's 2, she's at the Stout preschool, but she will be in 4K in 2020. I've been a teacher for 20 years, starting in Minnesota, then in Wisconsin, and then most recently, before moving here, we were in Oklahoma, where I was teaching at Cameron University. And one of the things that we watched happen while we were in Oklahoma for those 7 or 8 years, we watched a state budget cut after state budget cut after state budget cut starve the public schools to the point where when we left, 1 in 5 Oklahoma schools were not open 5 days a week. They were only open 4 days a week. Teachers were posting about, not having enough functioning chairs in their rooms, not having books that were up to date, and so on and so forth. And that's one of the reasons we moved here. We moved in part to be closer to Sarah's family, but in part because we just couldn't in good conscience send our girl to a school that was that damaged, a school system that was that broken. And when we came here, we came to a community that is fortunate to have, as Dave said, I mean, Menomonie Schools scores off the charts. We've got some really incredible educators. We're incredibly happy with the schools where we're sending our girls. And one thing we learned from that experience is that, like taking care of your car, like taking care of your teeth, like taking care of your heart, it's a lot easier to make sure that things stay functioning and that things stay strong, and you can't let things break down and then try to fix them, because that makes it a lot harder. So even though we haven't been here very long, when I came here, I knew that I wanted to do something. I wanted to play a role in making sure that the education in this community stays strong, because, as Nell said, as a lot of other people said, it's the key to the community. So that's why I'm running. As I said, I've got a lot of years' experience teaching at the university level, which means a lot of time in committees. So I have experience sort of taking an idea and turning and putting it into the language of policy and reading policy, and sort of thinking about how to take Chris's big ideas and turning them into the legalese that makes it work.
Thank you very much, Bayard Godsave. Okay, so now we're going to start with questions, and you can continue to offer questions. There will be someone who will come around and pick them up. All you'd have to do is put your hand up with that card in your hand, or if you don't have a card, put your hand up and she'll bring you one, or he'll bring you one. So you're not going to get left out if you have a question.
Ellen, for clarification, questions are 2 minutes, not maximum.
Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question if they choose. If you have directed the question to a specific candidate, then that person gets it first. But the others can also answer it if they choose. They don't have to, but they can. Okay. This one is not directed to a particular candidate. In this town, children as young as kindergarten have multiple opportunities to participate in the sports they love. If elected, what specific thing will you do to increase opportunities for children from kindergarten through high school to participate in theater opportunities? And I think we'll start with Urs, since Chris had his first chance last time.
Well, first of all, I should turn this on. First of all, it is about egalitarian opportunities. While we have invested pretty heavily in sports, and we do invest, I mean, historically, and I am the father of 2 girls that have taken advantage of the opportunities Menomonie has offered. We have great music programs. We have great opportunities across a range of activities. We need to be mindful that it's not all about sports, that we're actually contributing to society in a major way by embracing the arts. Because the arts, just like sports, have an opportunity to engage and advance student opportunities and student curiosity and engagement in their academic achievements also. So I hope I spoke loud enough. For some reason, I'm a little quiet tonight.
Thank you. Who would like to take?
I'll take it.
Would you like to, Nell?
Yeah.
Okay. Nell Johnson.
Well, Well, I really appreciate this question, and I'll preface it by saying I am a huge sports fan. I grew up cheering for the Packers and the Brewers and the Bucks and Menomonie football and Menomonie basketball, so I'm a big sports fan. But I'm also a big theater fan. And there's a lot of data out there that will tell you how important it is to engage kids in the arts, and how that isn't just about offering them opportunities in the arts, but that providing those opportunities actually helps them perform better academically. It helps them develop characteristic traits that will serve them well into adulthood. It helps them feel better about themselves, their confidence level rises. So those are all things that are really important, and they're reasons why we should support the arts. Now, I think, when we talk about putting money into certain programs, I think that's it raises a really good point about transparency in the district, so that our parents and our students and our community knows where the money's going and what percentage is going to this program and what percentage is going to that program, so that we just don't make big statements like, well, we do put a lot of money towards theater or the arts. It would help to know what percentage does go to that, I think. So I think those are opportunities for us as a district to maybe do better in terms of transparency and communication. And I think that we live in a community where we have awesome opportunities to partner with the university in terms of theater programs. We have opportunities through, I serve on the MTG board, the Menomonie Theater Guild board, and I know that we have talked with different board members about partnerships to provide greater opportunities. We used to have a theater program in our summer school that we don't offer anymore. Our middle school doesn't have a drama club. These are simple ways that we can provide opportunities for kids in the performing arts that don't cost that much money, and the payoff is going to be big.
Dave Steyer.
Thank you. I appreciate this question as well. I think one of the things that I'm most proud about this community is the academic achievements and opportunities that are available for our students in this district. I look back at my kids, and they did a little bit of sports, but they were mostly into the academic side. Our son Ben was in the Christmas Story. He played Ralphie, and we had a ton of fun. And with some of the theater things that they've done, all 4 kids have been involved in that somehow. How specifically, to get your question, how to increase it, I would like to see a little more collaboration, either with MTG or after-school theater in the district. Maybe we could try to put on an additional play at the middle school level and at the high school level if possible. I think that as long as the interest is there and they have the students that are willing to do it and advisors that are willing to teach it, I think it'd be a great idea. But I just want to commend what the district has done with the resources that we have. One of the things that we are looking at this year as well, possibly in our next budget, is some increase in the music and fine arts program in the district. We're still working through some of those things, but that's something that that the district is looking at as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. It's nice to see that we have such agreement on this. I wish that the school board had such agreement when it comes to negotiating these ideas. I think that the best thing to really think about when we think about arts, if you want it, you have to design for it. And you have to follow models that are successful, so this is really clear. If you want to make arts happen in schools, you have to build it into the school curriculum. You need to have sequential arts programs where students are engaged in doing art. You have to have art integration, where you can see how they do performance, and this is where theater comes in, where it addresses other aspects of what's going on in the learning, stories, literature, questions, politics. And then you also have to have exposure to students where they can be exposed to arts. It's simple. They do this in Oregon, and they do this in New Hampshire. New Hampshire also has an artist in residence program. It doesn't cost anything. And I brought this up at the school board before, but nothing happened. If you want arts, and we do, you have to design for it. You have to make it part of the policy, and you have to follow a policy that's been paid for us by other successful programs. So I'm glad that we have such agreement on this. And I'm also glad that the pathway forward is fairly simple. There are good models out there. We just need to have a school board that can implement them.
Thank you, Chris Freeman. Bayard Godsave.
Well, I'll be another voice of agreement on this. I mean, I'm a writer. My daughter's a burgeoning artist. The arts are incredibly important to me, and I think incredibly important to learning. It was one of the ways that I actually learned to read better through drawing and writing sort of together, right? So I think these are important things to offer to our students. And this is an issue that only sort of came to my attention recently, as talking to people about what's going on in the district, and hearing that there's sort of more students who want to be engaged in the theater program than there are resources for them. So one thing that I think any school board can do and should do is just always sort of keep in mind that a budget is fluid, and when you need funds, you need to address where that need is and sort of shift things around to make that happen. And I was glad to hear Dave say that they're thinking about doing that in the next term. And I would sort of build on what Nell was saying. I thought about making community connections and working with the Mabel and things like that. Going to the school board meetings the last few months or so, one of my favorite parts is when teachers come up and talk about what they're doing in the classroom. And almost universally, I see these really interesting choices to sort of take what's happening in the classroom out into the community. And I think the last one I was at, students were selling cat paintings to raise money for the Humane Society. And this is another one of those opportunities where the school and the community can sort of work with one another, and students can go out into the community. So, yeah.
Thank you, Bayard. Clint Moses?
All right. Yeah, I think there's no reason we can't follow the model that occurred basically with the sports complex. It was a very contested issue, obviously a 5-4 vote with the board. A lot of local support from business, a lot of collaboration as well, and there's no reason that couldn't occur with the arts as well. I think of my daughter, Madison, who's a freshman actually, when this one comes up. If it wasn't for the arts, wasn't for music, orchestra, she'd be lost. So it's one of those, it is very important. I myself was a very well-rounded student, probably not a great athlete, but very involved in a lot of things. So yeah, it's definitely something that a collaboration could be put together with small businesses. I think we have a very large number of very talented artists in our community, very talented cultural people. I mean, look at what's going on all the time at the Mabel Tainer, the Theater Guild, any of the arts around here. So I think if we get people passionate about it, I think they're going to get behind it. I, as a small business owner, would support it. We sponsor things all the time. I think there's other people out there. I think it's right. The time is now. It doesn't have to be an either or. It doesn't have to be a sports versus culture type thing. It can be very much well-rounded. I think there's a lot more people out there that make their living at the arts and culture than they do as a football player or hockey player. So that's just me, not anti-sports. I have season tickets to the Wild, so go. But that is it. I think it doesn't have to be an either or. So we're all in agreement.
Thank you. Next question. Now this time, Nell will start with an answer. There has been some dispute on the board this year. The role of board members when communicating with community members. Do you see a board member as a representative for the citizens who can speak freely and freely and openly, there we go, with them about district and board issues, or do you see the role as more of an advisor to the school district of Menomonie area, and that all community communications should go through the superintendent?
I see the role of a school board member as multifaceted. I think, as I mentioned in my opening statement, I see it primarily as an advocate for the students in our schools and the public school system itself, so what encompasses those things. But I also think that it needs to be a collaborative effort with the community. So I don't know why it would be problematic, and in fact I think it's important to get community feedback. I think that the school board should encourage community input and community feedback. Our community members are made up of parents, and those parents have students in our schools. And our community is made up of educators, and our community is made up of experts who know a lot about a lot of things that I don't know about. And so I think that it's important to get input and feedback. And so I'm less concerned about putting, if people are operating with a good conscience and they have good motives and they don't have personal agendas and they're serving the board the way I would intend to serve the board, I don't know that I would be so concerned about putting certain parameters on chain of communication. Now, of course, you have to follow policy and procedure. So if there's policies and procedures in place that dictate about certain things, then that's important. There are things that the board discusses in closed session. Those things are meant to not be discussed openly. So I understand that too. So, I think certainly policies and procedures have to be followed. But with that in mind, I think we should be encouraging communication rather than trying to exclude people from the conversation. I think open dialogue is better for all of us. I think creating an environment of knowledge is better. I think knowledge can be power, and the more we know, the better we can be. Dave?
Okay, thank you. This question about board member roles and responsibilities is a timely one with some of the things that have been going on with our school board. But again, first and foremost, the board member has a responsibility to follow policies or set policies and governance for the administration. We hire a superintendent. His job is to run the district. So our main role as a board member is to set policy, which the administrator must follow. We also have policies for the board themselves and things that we must do. And we're the feelers in the community, so we have an obligation to talk to people and to gather information and feedback, and I think our entire board is very good at that, at being a sounding board for community members, parents, teachers, whatever it might be. The thing that we have to be careful about is that we don't cross the line and get into things that are administrative responsibilities or things that might cause problems for the administrator. And that was, I think more of the issue that we had going on in the district. And so I think if people knew, in my role, I see it as being a sounding board for the community, setting policy for the board, and then hiring an administrator who does the job, and then, of course, getting feedback is important. So, thank you.
Chris?
Thanks. This is sort of an interesting question because it starts off asking one thing, and then it focuses on the real question, which I think is, should all communication go through Joe Zadowski? So, in terms of how you navigate that, that is, I think what the question is, and I do this with my students, I try and draw out what's really going on there. And that gets at a fundamental problem we have on our school board, and it's a communication problem. And it's the way in which that people try and set up parameters that are really operating outside of the way in which our policy operates, that try to govern the way in which we listen and we communicate with people in the community. And for me, one of the biggest questions that's left off the table is like, how does the school board communicate with our students? And how does the school board communicate with our teachers, who are the two biggest stakeholders who never seem to be invited to the table? Now, when students come in and talk to the school board, it's not often that the school board gives them ready ears. It's not often that they're thanked for their contribution. It's not often that their voices are welcomed. In fact, Dr. Sweat's children were asked not to come anymore. Teachers are also excluded from school board communication. And this is a problem. In terms of the question, it was getting at something called a chain of communication, which does not exist. And it's been a problem because it's structured a top-down understanding of how people talk about education. Who can teachers talk to? Are they allowed to talk to school board members? Are they allowed to talk to parents? In terms of the way in which that question has been structured, it's been said that they have to follow a chain of command, which stifles them and marginalizes them, and it hurts students and hurts parents, and it sets up a kind of structure that doesn't advance the best that we can do for our community and for our kids.
Bayard?
I'll go back to the first part of the question. A school board, I think a school board member is an elected official, and so our duty is to the people who elect us, and not only the people that vote for us, but everybody in the community. And there's a whole group of people in this community that are really affected by the choices that the school board makes that don't even get to vote, and that's the students. And so, I think our responsibility is to the community and to the students. At least that's how I would view my role in the school board. The question of communication, one thing I've noticed going to these meetings is I can see why community members get frustrated trying to communicate with the school board, especially through those meetings, because a lot of times in the comment section, the comment part of the meeting, someone will say something, they might be very, very impassioned, and there's almost a kind of stony silence from the board. And I think a lot of that has to do with the structure of how meetings work, right? I mean, it's governed by Robert's Rules of Order, and there's a good reason for that, because if you don't have that, you're going to have a 6-hour meeting instead of a 2-hour meeting, and you're going to have policy being made willy-nilly, and so it's good to have that structure, but a lot of times community members aren't necessarily going to be familiar with that structure, and they're going to want some sort of, they're seeking some sort of immediate kind of response to their question. I know we can't change policy on the fly to address somebody's question, but there must be, and I don't necessarily know the answer, but that's a problem that I see, and I think there's got to be a way to make community members feel like they're getting a response when they come to the meetings, or I hope there's a way to do that.
Thank you, Bayard. I want to bring to your attention that this forum is not set up for applause to individual question answers. It's tempting, it's very tempting, but please refrain, because the next person needs to speak too. There's not enough time tonight. Thank you. Menomonie is so well behaved because we are polite to each other. I like that.
With that, I don't expect any applause on this one either. Yes, we are the ears, eyes, and the mouth for all of our constituents. Our job is a sounding board from the teachers, from the students, back to the board meeting to discuss what the issues in our community are. That being said, we're also the face of our school district, our community, which means that we have to act professionally, not conduct business outside of the board meetings. But the idea that we're going to stifle communication, that's a lot of the dysfunction that I think occurs here right now. I met with, I think all but actually one of the current board members, either by phone or with coffee or whatever, and the one thing, they're all great people, the one thing that they all agree on is that there is some level of dysfunction within the board. That's not any top secret or anything like that. So I think the number one cause for that is lack of communication. I think misunderstanding. I think if we improve communication between teachers, board members, the district administrator, everybody at the table, I think we'd have a better outcome. Once again, I'll say we are the face, so I don't want to do anything that would make my kids not proud of what I do. I want my kids to look up to every single board member as a role model. So that includes things on social media too. So, but with that, no applause, please.
Thank you, Clint. Okay. You're right, I'm out of order.
I'll make it quick. I am one of those individuals that has had the benefit of being the teacher on the other side of the board. The board has clearly listened to in both Kimberly and DC Everest High School. What I do know, that there's a learning curve to becoming a board member. And I do know there's also a trust factor. We have to earn the trust of the community. I also know we speak, when it comes to making decisions, we are a board of one. We don't individually make a decision, but we individually bring your voice to the table. We can do better. There is a lot of work involved. And nurturing healthy habits within a board is powerful. Having a highly functioning board is powerful. My experience has been, I've had the privilege to be heard as a teacher in both instances. We certainly have, on the Menomonie School Board, we certainly have listened to students. We have respected students. That doesn't, and it always comes down to all students, not just my daughter or my daughters. It really is about all students that we are voicing. Thanks.
Thank you. Now we're starting a new question, right? Yeah. I can get confused too. And the next question, actually there are 3 short interrelated questions. They are interrelated, so I am going to read them as one question to be responded to in general. And I hope you can deal with that. Please tell us, how do you plan to deal with bullying in the schools as a school board member? What is your opinion about how or if the school district of Menomonie should accommodate LGBT and transgender students? What are your thoughts about providing gender-neutral bathrooms? And the first person to take this question will be Dave.
Thank you. So, 3 parts. We'll start with the bullying issue, and that's a problem wherever you go. I don't care if it's a huge city or a single section school. There's always trouble. There has been ever since I was a kid. And but one of my proudest moments as a school board member was listening to our middle school counselor here a while back talk about some of the steps and what the middle school has done. Just super impressive with the work that they do in the school, how they handle situations. Not to say that there aren't things that we can improve, there always is. But I do think that we have a really good staff and are working hard on this issue. The second part of that was LGBT and the and how that's being handled, transgender students. We have, you may not know this, some of you may, we have students right now in the district and the schools that identify with that and are using the restrooms just fine, to their choice. It hasn't been an issue in our district. And I guess from my standpoint, when it's working, I don't see a reason to change it. We do have bathrooms in the high school and other buildings that staff uses if it's an issue. I think that students could use if they need to, if they want more privacy or something like that. But like I said, I know for a fact that we have students in the district that are identifying that way and using the restrooms as they are now, and things seem to be working fine that way. So thank you.
Chris?
These questions all are linked. Maybe they concern the way in which we use space and how people move through space and how people feel in the space that they're in. And as I go through the schools in the Menomonie School District, they don't feel welcoming. They don't feel like they're creating a space where we put values first. That look towards caring. I believe it was the second one. Was the second one on our motto, to create caring individuals. That has to be part of a curriculum. It has to be built into the program. It has to start in kindergarten. It has to go through grade school. It has to be in middle school. This happens through reinforcement and through a sense of space. In terms of how we think about our LGBTQIA+ students, they're brave to come out in a community like this. They know that they're not welcome. But creating a space where we speak for them before they have to ask for it. That's part of our mission about creating a safe space for our students. They don't have to come hat in hand to ask for a special treatment. We need to make the spaces for them so they can learn along with the other kids in school, know that we value them because we're better and stronger when we value our diversity. That's true now, and it sure as heck is going to be more true when they're adults. That's where we're moving. And just like, you know, theater education and arts education, if we're not designing for it, we're missing the boat.
Bayard?
Yeah, I would say that inclusivity needs to be a part of curriculum planning, and we need to encourage educators who are willing to do that, who are willing to make that part of their curriculum. I think we need to give teachers the tools that they need to make inclusivity a part of everything that they do, and give them the tools that they need to respond to problems like bullying. Right now, my two girls are pretty young. They haven't really experienced much of that yet. And you know, as Dave said, we all sort of grew up with it, but it's different now. You know, I can't imagine sort of what it is to be in a place where everything you have is sort of both with you and out in the ether, and you know, the professionals that we have in our schools need the tools that are out there to sort of help them to deal with that. And yeah, I think like I agree with Chris entirely. I mean, making a space of inclusivity, making schools a place of inclusivity, and just making that a part of how we do things, and making that a part of not only school culture but administrative culture, so that we're ahead of the curve, right? So that we know the ways we need to sort of think about who's in our schools and what the schools can sort of give them. And as far as bathrooms go, yes, yeah.
Thank you. And Clint?
These three are really, really intertwined, related. A lot of them come down to more support for the teachers in the schools, from social work as well. The bullying part of it, obviously early intervention, early recognition and intervention is huge. I've personally seen situations that have gotten out of hand and it happens very quickly. People are very busy, they go about their day, little subtle things happen. We had an incident with one of our daughters, actually this school year, with something, and it was at the high school, and I believe actually it was handled quite well. We were notified very quickly, it was taken seriously. Can't disclose any more than that, I guess, but I was happy with how that was handled. As for the LGBT+, the physical space actually is kind of the easier fix. Budget-wise, it's not necessarily. It's expensive to add those things. You think of like a family style like bathroom. But I agree that a kid shouldn't have to go get a special pass or something like that to be able to use that facility or something. That still, I think, is the easier fix to it. I think it's more of the cultural change that is tougher. The accepting and respect of all people, regardless. Whether you're LGBT or hetero, doesn't matter. You all deserve a good education. You all deserve a friendly, safe space to be in. I think it's something that comes with time, but we also have to be proactive about it. It's not just going to happen. Gender neutral bathrooms, I guess I already touched on that, but like I said, I think that's probably the easier part of the fix. Once again, it's one of those things that we definitely need more feedback. We need to be communicating with the community to find out what's important, what's essential. They're having some type of debate up front here too, so other than that, that's really all I had to say. I think there are a lot of good points that were brought up, so.
Wise to know when to stop. Next one. Earth. By the way, you don't have to answer any particular question, but you certainly can.
Well, let's see what comes out, right? First of all, as somebody that's been a teacher for 29.5 years, working on towards my 30th, inclusivity has always been part of the teacher preparation piece. Heavy in-service happens on a fairly regular basis. and teachers do their best, quite honestly. They understand the practices to a large degree. That doesn't mean that the district doesn't have to invest more as things arise. I'm going to go back to bullying because all of these are intersectional, because all of them in some way or form manifest themselves as bullying. I think we have some soul searching to do as a community. I think we have some soul searching to do by looking inward at our own values, at our own beliefs, at the way we say things, at the way we react verbally and non-verbally. When we have issues like this, we own it as a community. Our children listen. Our adults are role models. Our students mimic a lot of the behaviors that they encounter from each other and from within the community. So, you know, I'm going to say this is bigger than a school issue. This is one of these moments where our community has to take an active part in resolving some of this dilemma. And as far as having access, we're human. We're more similar than we're different. And we should be respected for our differences, not just accepted, but embraced for our differences. Thanks.
Thank you. Now?
I would agree with Chris that these questions are certainly interlinked. They're really big questions though, so to have that 2 minutes is just not enough time for me to cover them well enough, I don't think. But I'll do my best to give you an abridged version. Bullying is an issue in lots of school districts, that's true. But I think that means that we shouldn't be dismissive of it because it happens everywhere. I think it's really, really important that we pay important attention to it. The statistics are staggering. There's over 200,000 kids that are physically attacked daily in this country. That's from a government website, stopbullying.gov. There are over 100,000 kids that miss school every day because they're afraid of being bullied. These are tragic numbers. And I think that we are a society that has evolved, so the way kids are bullied has changed, and we need to be better informed about that. And it's not necessarily a criticism, it's just a fact that we have to do better how we're teaching people in our schools to identify it and then to work with the students that are feeling less than or assaulted. And it matters. Teen anxiety rates are sky high. Suicide rates are on the increase. This is a big deal. Now I've got 30 seconds to cover the transgender or the gender neutral bathrooms and the, I will say this very quickly. There is a lot of data out there that will tell you that creating inclusive environments for our kids is very much closely tied to their learning. And so if we're telling our kids that you have to, you know, well, if it's working for you now and, you know, you just have to kind of do it, you know, in a way that maybe isn't making you feel like the person that you are, then that's not creating inclusive environments.
Thank you, Noll.
We've gone the round.
We've gone the round, right? New question, totally different question. Also a loaded question. How should teachers' salaries and raises be determined? And the teacher gets to answer this first. Chris?
Okay, well, it's true that the teachers should make at least as much as the superintendent of schools. So that's the first place to start. No, it's a super hard question, but I think as Joe will tell you, he's got a very good understanding that our compensation is pretty good here in terms of what the salaries are. But he'll also tell you that the biggest problem we face is the way in which that prospective teachers look at how their benefits work. We were facing budget constraints, and the board made a choice to change how our retirement packages were structured, how We shifted from, I think it was a state-run retirement plan to a private company, and we don't attract the same quality candidates anymore. That's a problem. And when we think about what we're offering teachers, we're selling our community to them, and we're selling them a place where they want to feel comfortable. And part of that is the way in which they want to see that they're being treated in ways that kind of accord with other high-performing school districts. And thinking about that, it's salary sometimes, and I can tell you because I'm a history teacher, and I don't make much money at all. I do it for, you know, other factors. I do it out of love. I do it out of things that I feel rewarded by. But I also know that my university has taken care of me, and they reward me when I do well. So a lot of times we've got a very short-sighted understanding of what compensation looks like. And your salary is some of the least important things that teachers consider when they take a job here. And I think that that's something we have to rethink going forward, is how we think about how we sell ourselves to the best talent in the state to make sure our students are getting the best teachers for the long term.
Bayard?
I think that we need to be competitive with states like Minnesota and Michigan, and I agree with Chris. It's not just about the salary that you're bringing home, but about the quality of your health care, the quality of your retirement. I think that in order to be an effective teacher or worker of any kind, you shouldn't have to worry about things like your kids getting sick, you getting sick, you know, what's going to happen when you're 70. You know, it's important that we're able to make promises to the people who work for us, teachers, staff, administrators, everybody, and allow them to feel that they're secure in the jobs that they have, that they're secure in the lives that they have, and that that our appreciation to them is sort of shown in how we care for them. So those are all the things I would like to do. How you do that with Act 10 is a different story, but you know, that's the sort of philosophy that I bring to it, like how I would think about compensation, I guess.
Okay, that would bring it back to Chris.
Clint, I do have a brother named Chris, so I'm used to that, but that's fine.
My husband would say, it's a C word, what do you want?
Well, first of all, when I compare us to peers around here, we do have a good self-funded healthcare plan as part of the compensation package, and comparatively, compared to some other schools. Professional development, opportunities for advancement, like working towards your master's degree, collaboration with like the UW system to obtain your master's degree. Good pay, I actually looked this up the other day. 2 separate surveys, one by Glassdoor and another by salary.com for what that's worth. Our average teacher in Menomonie makes $57,000, and that's all teachers across the board, compared to just over 52. It's 52.3 actually, interesting enough, in Altoona, Chippewa, and Eau Claire school districts. Hudson was slightly more, I believe that one was like 59. Of course, it's a little more expensive maybe to live over there too. But just the flat rate increases doesn't really seem fair. I do think if you're at the top of your profession, you're doing a great job. Like my wife is sitting in front here, so now I really have to watch what I'm saying. She's a better chiropractor than me, so she can demand more money than maybe I can. But I don't think that part is fair. I do think there should be something for retention, merit base, and longevity. But I also don't think just because you've been in your position for a long time, you should necessarily get paid more if you're not improving your skills and doing a better job contributing to whatever your trade is, whatever your skill is. I definitely think we have a majority of teachers that have the absolute best intentions, but there also needs to be ways to get those that maybe aren't best intentions or best teachers to not teach anymore as well. In chiropractic school, a lot of our instructors that were not so good were just not very good at their trade, so they became teachers. But then there was other teachers that were very passionate and we got a lot out of, and they were well worth the tuition that we're still paying for all these years later. Beyond that, impact and legacy, and Chris had actually touched on a little bit, so it's not just about how much you're paycheck is, it's also the lasting legacy and impact that you leave. With that, I'm being told to stop, so.
Thank you, Clint. And Urs.
So I liken teaching to farming. They're both occupations that you're never done. You take everything home with you. The work is enduring and it's fruitful. Teachers ultimately do teach because they're passionate about it. Just like farmers farm because they're passionate about it. They make a difference. What they seek is some stability. What they seek are some recognitions for work well done. What they seek is support and advancement opportunities. Wages in this area, I think we're blessed to have the quality of teachers that we manage to attract. Wages are very competitive. This is a conversation I get to have with my wife, who's a principal, who's hiring all the time also. And Menomonie is a pretty appealing place to want to be a teacher. Now, the problem compounds itself by the lack of interest in becoming teachers. And part of that has to do with the societal shift on perhaps the narrative of what it means to be a teacher. So how we nurture individuals to see Menomonie as a compelling place to live and raise a family is part of what we sell. And it's part of how we attract and retain teachers. Thanks.
Thank you. Noll?
I guess when I hear that question, I don't take it so much to be a question about how our district compensates compared to districts surrounding us. I take it more about the actual question of how we pay teachers. And I think that Bayard touched on something important, and that is Act 10, where teachers have lost significant collective bargaining rights in Wisconsin. And that is concerning because over the last 20 years, teacher attrition rates have gone up significantly. And it's estimated that right now, anywhere between the annual teacher attrition rate is about between 16 and 35%. Now, I know that's a wide spread, but even at the low end, that's alarming. And to complicate matters, there aren't as many qualified candidates going into teacher education programs. So, and that is, even though teachers do go into teaching because of their passion for educating, I was a teacher and I was passionate about teaching. But they do have families and they do have healthcare costs that are all rising. And Wisconsin teachers are hurting more than lots of other states. And so we have to, as a district, really take that into consideration. Because what it means then is that our students aren't getting as qualified teachers. What it means also is that teachers are retiring early, or teachers are just, for rural areas, it can be really a big issue too, because in Wisconsin specifically, because teachers are leaving smaller rural schools to go to bigger cities because they pay slightly more. So it's something that we have to look at, and it's another reason why grassroots movements can make big changes at a national level. So if we make enough noise, we can make changes, and I think the way teachers are compensated has to change.
Dave?
Thank you. I'm actually very proud of what we've done in our district as far as from a teacher's salary and raise standpoint. So teachers, when a new teacher is hired, obviously they'll start in at the lower end of the pay scale. If we bring a teacher in from an outside district, they'll fit in based on years of experience and how they have, where they fit on that scale. One of the things that we've been doing over the last couple of years, we started a master's cohort in this district where teachers that get their master's can get a pay incentive for doing that. We also, in the last year, instituted longevity bonuses for our teachers. So if they've been in the district so many years, they're eligible for a longevity bonus. It was touched on a little bit about our retirement plan. We do not have a private retirement plan, but the employees when Act 10 came through and we elected to switch our insurance to Medica, that has been one of the, this district has done very well to budget the last couple of years, and health insurance plays a big part of that. Our increases to our self-funded plan have been very minimal, and a lot of that has to do with the wellness programs initiated by the district and how well the teachers have been doing that as far as taking care of themselves and using some of the services that are available to reduce costs to the districts. The salary and benefit portion of our budget in Menomonie amounts to about 80% of our total budget. So that's one of the things in the district that we really have to watch. A teacher's salary is a continuing cost. It's not a one-time cost. It's a cost that comes up every year. And so when we add staff, we have to be recognize how that's going to affect the district, not just a year out, but 5 years out, 10 years out. And I'm also proud of the fact that this district has given out at or above cost of living index increases to the teachers the last 2 years. So thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, so before I ask the next question, we're supposed to run till 8 o'clock. How patient are you? Would you like to do one more question after 8 o'clock, which is another 12 minutes? If you are opposed to that, put your hand up. I think we get one more question. But this is not the last question then. And we would start with Bayard, right? Right. Are you supportive of teachers being trained and having guns in the classroom?
I'm not sure that I'm convinced that that's a particularly effective response to school shootings. But I know that people who are convinced that is a particularly effective response to school shootings are not going to be convinced by me telling them that it's not a particularly effective response. So I like to come at this from a different perspective. As a teacher, one thing I've noticed is that in this country we have this idea that a teacher's job description is continually revisable, right? So something comes up and it's like, oh, we'll have the teachers do it. We'll have the teachers do it. We'll have the teachers do it. So the idea that our response to school shootings is going to be, oh, we'll have the teachers do it. To me, it sort of falls into another one of those things. And this is a huge responsibility to put on someone, to say, so in addition to everything you're doing, we want you to be tactically trained to respond to an active shooter and potentially kill one of your students, right? That's an incredible burden to put onto somebody. And I think, and I know that proponents of such plans, they say things like, well, they can choose to or not to, and of course they'll be trained. But when you're talking about training for something like this, it isn't just, we're going to train people to shoot weapons, but you really have to train them to be a SWAT team, right? I mean, so if you're going to train them to have basically a second job, you need to compensate them for that second job. And I think, so really I don't think, for a whole number of reasons, I don't think it's just feasible to respond in that way, and I don't think it's fair to ask teachers to do that. So.
Chris? Clint. I've known Clint for a long time.
Yes,
too,
Elaine.
so.
That's right, Elaine. All right.
Thank you.
First of all, stop harassment, stop gun violence. That's what we need to do. Recognize the problem before it becomes a big problem. Secondly, I'm a Second Amendment guy. I do have concealed carry. I'm not carrying now. We're in the government center. But the idea of arming all teachers is a crazy one. I do think that every building needs to have someone designated, if they don't already, in crisis management and training. Someone that kind of heads that up. I do know that the district just received quite a bit of grant money in extra surveillance, for instance, like camera surveillance up at the high school. That's going to help with this type of stuff. But yeah, the big thing is it's asking the teachers to do more. Furthermore, insurance isn't going to allow it anyway. Our district insurance will not allow guns to be carried in by the teachers in the school. I think this question might have been put up from a candidate or a board member from last year too, by the way, so I do suspect who asked that. But anyway, that's my stance on it. I'm not going to tell you that all the teachers need to be packing heat, so.
Thank you. Urs.
Well, I really respect what Bayard said. We continue to shift the responsibility on teachers. I'm not sure that teachers are in the position to take on that responsibility. Ideally, schools have response teams in motion. I mean, they do understand what needs to happen in the process of an active shooter incident. My suspicion is if you train teachers to respond using guns, how will they react in the moment when they face that particular instance? How do students respond in the moment when they realize perhaps that there are teachers that are carrying a gun in school, right? Again, I think this has to be a bigger community conversation in terms of how we respond to things like this. This is bigger than schools. This is also in some ways a societal issue that we have to really talk about thoughtfully and come to grips with what's really going on.
Thank you. Noll?
Thanks. I would also echo what Bayard said. I do think that is too much responsibility to put on teachers that already have too much responsibility. I also, I grew up with guns in our home. My dad has been a hunter safety instructor for a bazillion years. But I also know that we have trained police professionals who sometimes make the wrong choice when it comes to guns. And so those are people that have been trained to be in those moments, and they still make mistakes. And so to have that be the solution where we're arming our teachers and putting them in that situation and the burden of that responsibility and the possibility of making a mistake and shooting an unarmed child that maybe wasn't the risk they thought the child was, that's a big deal. And so so I think that, and like Clint said, I think that talking about arming teachers, that's a conversation that should be preceded long before about how we're approaching harassment and school safety and student safety and things like that. So that's how I stand on that, I guess.
Thank you. And Dave?
Thank you. It was surprising to me to find out that over half the states in the country actually support teachers carrying concealed carry in their schools in one form or another. Not that I necessarily support that. I think if you look at what our district has been promoting as the liaison officer, we've been trying to get funding for an additional officer through the city. We have not had much luck to date. We keep trying. Hopefully we'll get that second officer position funded and give us some more presence for the trained staff to be within the schools. And I think realistically in our district, that's the route we're going to go. I think if you look at, one of the things that surprised me about it as well was that I actually had a teacher approach me and ask us to approve that, not so that this individual could carry a gun, but for protection devices and stuff for herself. But and that surprised me that they weren't looking at it more from a school safety, but for personal protection. So I guess we'll leave it at that.
Chris?
Okay. So we're almost all in agreement on this. And it's fairly clear that we're all Second Amendment guys here, because we all believe in the Constitution. When we talk about guns in schools, this is what we call a classic wedge issue. And my oldest boy, Rowan, he's like, please, Dad, just don't take this one up. But it's in my nature that I take these things up. I have to be extremely clear because usually what I say about these issues becomes misconstrued. My response to this question last year that may have cost me some votes was that when you put a gun into the hands of a teacher in a classroom, it disrupts the relationship between the students and the teachers. This is why our police officers don't bring their guns into the classroom. I teach future law enforcement officers. They're in my peace studies classes. And we talk about the importance of being able to create commensurability between people. I want to be very clear about this. A teacher with a gun changes the relationship between them and their students. It really sacrifices that most important aspect of our mission in the Menomonie School District, is that we're engaging in education as a caring act that teaches our children to be caring individuals. I've got no problem with what kind of guns you would like to have. We're all Second Amendment people here because we're Americans. We uphold the Constitution. But I want to be very clear that cowboy teachers with guns who walk into the classroom brandishing their weapons disrupts the commensurability between them and their students. I've been teaching for a long time, and my students know that I love them. You don't want anything to get in the way of that.
Not even the moderator.
Oh, get out of here.
Okay. Now, the next one is I'm going to read this question, and then we're going to give them just a minute to think about it, because this is going to be a handful. So I would think it would be a really good idea, after I read this question, that anybody who wants to can stand up. And I'm going to watch my, the timekeeper is going to give me 30 seconds on this. You can stand up, stretch, whatever, while they're thinking about it. Because the question is, what do you see as the 3 most pressing or important issues facing the school district today? That's a good question. Give them 30 seconds. Stand up if you want to.
I went to kids if I walk into a classroom now, how old are you? And I said, older than 30.
And we start with, no, I have lost track. We're back to Clint.
I didn't know who she was talking to, actually. So, boy, to lump these up in 3 issues. These were actually my interview questions when I interviewed current board members, actually. What are the 3 issues? So, but I did not bring that sheet with me tonight, so I can't share what you guys said even. So, first one, I would say if I was to prioritize them, opportunities, diversity of opportunities. Trying to meet all the different needs that are out there. Things are a lot more complex than they were when I was in school, and many of you are older than me, I will admit. I just lost some votes on that one, but the constant more and more activities. It's no different than a household budget. Nowadays, you have to budget how much time and how much money we put into this and that. If your kid's in soccer, hockey, volleyball, or whatever, or 4-H, it's trying to figure out how we're going to provide all the things that they want to do. So it's opportunities to match up with all the different interests that our kids have, and with that goes hand in hand the financial part of that too. Back when I was in school, they didn't have activity fees, actually. Things were much, much cheaper. Cost of inflation going up and up, and we see that with our business as well, trying to provide the same amount of service with less dollars coming in, having to serve more people with less dollars coming in. It's no different for a school district. And then I would say the #1 thing, and this brings in that whole big bucket of stuff that we already addressed, harassment. Harassment in our schools, tie that right into with mental health issues as well. Gun violence, safety in our schools. If we can recognize harassment, I got into what I do because I was harassed. No, I wasn't harassed, but basically recognizing problems and fixing them, not just covering them up. Identifying what a problem is. Don't just cover it up with a drug or medicine. It's the same with harassment. We need to recognize what's causing it, what is bothering the person, why someoe's doing it, and stop it. And I'm being told to stop, so that's a good time.
Urs Haltener.
All right. I'm going to say mental health and how to deal with that, how to support, how to get the community to surround and own parts of it, and how to respond within schools in a proactive way is certainly one of the issues. And it seems to be advancing from multiple perspectives. The other one, I think we forget to recognize curricula is advancing. Knowledge and skills life cycles are speeding up. Competition for resources and competition for our place in the world as a nation is very much at stake here too, in terms of having a world-class kind of an education that responds to yet to be envisioned futures. And that's going to clearly take some money and certainly staff development to respond to some of that. This next one, I in some ways hesitate to say it, but I have to say it. There's a consumerism movement going on in terms of school choice and all of those things. We need to be equipped with the idea that in some ways when we make choices as parents, we also make a choice that in some ways segregates our students. And we need to be careful. We live in one world. We're as strong as our citizenry. And it's definitely a global space and place that we call Mother Earth. We only get one, and we have to be good to it, too.
Thank you. Nell Hoffner Johnson.
I guess I would narrow my three answers down to student welfare, funding, and then the climate and culture in our schools. So student welfare, we're talking, that's pretty big too, but we're talking about mental health of our students. We know that, like I mentioned before, anxiety rates are way up. In fact, student anxiety is affecting kids more these days than poverty or drug use. So that's a big thing, and we have to educate and approach it in a way that's productive and helpful. Bullying is another issue that falls under that student welfare. Inclusive classrooms. We know that students learn better when they feel like they're represented, when they feel like they're valued, when they feel like they matter. Making sure that our curriculum doesn't just express a single narrative, that we have walls in our school and books in our school and staff in our school that makes all kids and their differences not seem so outside, that they seem like they're more included. And so those are things with student welfare. Funding is a big deal, and it has been for a long time, but it becomes increasingly more consequential, I think, for public schools, especially Wisconsin public schools. And Urs is right, we have to consider that voucher programs and charter schools are taking money away from public education, so we have to find ways to address funding. And then that culture and climate again. And that's, again, goes back to having teachers that feel valued, that feel teacher efficacy, where they feel like they actually have some autonomy in their classroom and that they have an impact on how students learn. Communication that improves that culture and climate. I guess my time is done.
Time up. Dave Steyer.
Thank you. I think if, when we talk about the three top issues facing our district, financial always has to be one of the key things that we look at. That encompasses so many things, whether it be the salaries, the buildings. We're fortunate in our district that we have Fund 46 set up, a 30-year maintenance plan to address building needs and take care of the infrastructure in our school. We're probably one of the few schools in the state that has that set up, and so I'm very proud of the work that Dr. Zadowski and the administration's team and the school board has done in that regard. From a financial standpoint, you can be very proud of the work that this district has done. It's first rate. The second biggest thing, I think, we are right now in the midst of a strategic planning update in the district. We've done a lot of legwork. We had a meeting Monday night again on it. There's 5 pillars right now that we're looking at as far as going forth with. Number 1, student career and college and life ready. Number 2, student social and emotional wellness. Number 3, developing parent and community partnerships. Number 4 is work with our workforce. And number 5 is facility and operations. And I think implementing this, finalizing the strategic plan, implementing it in this next year and making it part of our plan of work for Dr. Zadowski and the district, I think is a huge thing. And then I think the third thing, I guess I would lump into how our district is performing. If you look at our latest evaluation, as I said in the onset, we scored exceeding expectations. And I think when it's all said and done, we want to have kids that are ready to go out and cope in the world and do well. And so I think having a school that performs well, not only does it attract students, but it helps develop students for the future as well. Thank you.
Okay. And Chris Freeman?
This is a toughie. And when we think about, like, okay, how we set priorities, I think that the first thing is that we're talking about people that are running for school board, so our first priority has to be fixing school board. The communication on school board is broken. It operates like a power play. People who execute power rather than creating policy that makes education work better for our children. The problem is not Joe Zadowski. The problem is not our teachers. The question that everybody that's running for school board has to address first is what's wrong with our school board. You know, where I'm from, a very similar place to Menomonie, you don't hear about the school board. They're a non-factor. If you hear about the school board, there's something wrong. In the recent power play to try and get rid of all, like, the people that were in positions of power and replace them wholesale, it was embarrassing for us. We had to hire an outside lawyer to come in to mediate because people can't talk and listen to each other. So that's priority number 1. Priority number 2 is we have to stick to our values. We've got 3 values that are very clear. And what has happened is that our values have been encroached upon by outside state initiatives. We're directing our students' education around performance on tests. That's not what we should be doing in our classroom. That testing company, it's a cut rate test. And to teach the test is sacrificing the education of our kids. When we think about how we want to think about what the culture looks like in our schools, that's what we set by our example, by sticking true to our values, by creating dialogue and space for listening, and by taking a proactive way in which that we can work together to look out for the kids, right, that are part of our job. Thanks.
I was joking with Chris that being last, I could just sort of pick the best ones from everybody. And it may look like I'm doing that, but I wrote down my list. One thing I think, and this has been mentioned, but long-term funding is something that the school board really has to sort of keep an eye on. And we have, at the budget meeting, I sort of saw 2 things that are kind of looming on the horizon. One is the sports complex. We're going to start writing checks for that soon. And the other is, like many communities in this country, we've got a lot of baby boomers who are going to retire soon, and we've made promises to them that we need to keep. And funding their retirement is, I was sort of looking at the graph and I was like, wow, that's a big bubble in a couple of years. That isn't to say that it looked like the board was unprepared for that. I mean, one of the things I felt good coming out of the meeting that people are thinking about that, but it's something that over the next 3, 5, 10 years, we have to make sure there's people on the school board who are keeping an eye on that and making sure that there's money for the sports complex and theater and everything else, and money for retirement and healthcare and so on and so forth. Second, as a number of people have said, you know, addressing mental health issues and anxiety in students. I mean, this is something that I see at Stout. You know, sort of two sides of that. One, I see when it's not addressed, how that affects academic performance, and you know, I've seen students who are grappling with that, and then they just disappear because they can't keep up with their courses anymore. But I've also seen it when the intervention processes that are in place are working, and you know, they thrive, they succeed. So I think that's important. And then last, something that's sort of come up a lot, you know, just inclusivity and empathy, and teaching students to see each other and care about each other. Like Clint says, that's the best way to sort of stop violence.
Sort of stop? Thank you, Bayard. Okay, so we are at the end of the question period. It may be that and some of you would like to communicate with these candidates, and I think I asked them if it would be all right for them to, if they wouldn't mind sharing their emails with you. So the easiest way to do that would be if, after you make your statement, you each get a closing statement, you know. You would take your name sign and write your email below it and leave it on the table. And then those of you who want that can file past the table. Does that sound like it would work?
Mm-hmm. We could write it on the board.
Or we could write it on the board. What would you guys rather do? Okay, write it on the board. Okay, we're going to write it on the board. So the next thing is to start with the last person who got to speak to you at the beginning of this evening. And he has 2 minutes to make his closing statement. That would be Bayard Godsave.
Well, I don't have much else to say except thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, thank you to all of you for coming out. Thank you to everyone up here. It was wonderful listening to you tonight. As I've said before, and as a number of people have said, I think we have something really special in our Menomonie schools, and I really hope if you give me a chance to be on the board, that I will work hard to keep it that way. And it's my goal to be an advocate for all of our students, students with special and exceptional needs, LGBTQ students, students of color, students from underrepresented and marginalized communities. Every student, I think, is important. That's in all of our policies, that language is there, and I hope to be that kind of advocate. So again, thank you.
Okay, and Chris Freeman.
Closing statements are really kind of hard because it's the last chance we have to really try to add impact in terms of who we are and what our message is. I rarely stay on point, but when I think about like why we're here, the school district has a lot going right. They've got a great overall plan. Their planning sessions create great strategies, but the problem is how we deliver on those strategies. So thinking about how the school board could create a better space for thinking realistically about what we can do. A lot of people make promises about like what they're going to do to change the school district. You know, the school board can't really do much about that. But one thing that we should be doing is not get in the way of the good work that's happening and impeding the potential good work that should be happening. That's something we can do. And trying to find a way to bring diverse players into a relationship with each other, that's kind of what I do. I encourage vigorous debate. I expect people to come prepared. Sometimes it seems like the school board isn't prepared to talk about the subjects that they're there for. There's relatively little conversation in terms of how we have vigorous debate on things that matter. So what I bring to the table is an ability to talk to people and to redress and refocus ourselves onto our values, what matters and why, and to make us all be realistic about what a school board can do. We're a means to a better ends. But we don't teach in the classrooms. We have very limited control over how much money we have. But we're role models. It's an opportunity for lively debate, but also coming together to make decisions for the most number of kids that we have in our community. And too many of those kids are left off the table.
Thank you, Chris. And David Steyer.
Thank you. I want to take this opportunity to thank the League of Women Voters and everybody that came out tonight. Tremendous. I'm honored to be a board member on the Menomonie School District. And you've heard a lot of different opinions tonight as far as how we're functioning and what might seem a little rough on the outside. I assure you the school board is still getting our work done and performing at a high level. And I give credit to our administration and the wonderful staff that we have in the district for accomplishing those things. I think that all my life I've been very good at getting people to work together. I'm a middle child of 6 in my family originally, and so I was kind of thrown into that role. I remember growing up, we used to fight like cats and dogs, but when I met my wife, she taught me a different way, and that was communicate, talk things through, and that works very well. We get along very well now as we've aged, and my sister's in back, she can attest to that. So, but I just think that how things might be perceived sometimes isn't always reality, and I think the school board actually does a very good job of getting our work done. What might not seem like there's much debate sometimes, we have motions that come up each meeting for discussion only, and so we typically will have discussion at one board meeting, and the following meeting that discussion item will come up for a vote. And so sometimes at that second meeting, there's very little discussion on something, but the discussion happened the prior meeting. And I know I thought the same thing when I first started going to school board meetings years ago. I go, why aren't they talking about this? And I said the same thing in public, we need more discussion, but we are having very good debate on the issues. And so I would appreciate your vote on April 2nd. I appreciate everybody coming out tonight, and thank you for your support.
Noll Hoffner Johnson.
I would like to reiterate that. Oh, Dave, did you turn that on? Okay, reiterate that I thank all of you for taking the time to come out. I care a lot about our district. I care a lot about the kids in our district. I've been in schools working with kids in one way or another since I was in graduate school, and that's been quite a long time ago. I have a background in teaching, so I know what's important to consider when we want to achieve the mission statement of our school district, which I think is a great mission statement. The only thing that motivates me to be here is my concern and compassion for students in public education. I'm not here for a popularity contest. I'm not here because I want publicity. I'm here because I care. And I care about my kids, and I care about the community's kids, and I care about our broader community. And as somebody, speaking as a mom who now has a 9th grader, who was born yesterday, it feels like, we have a very fleeting amount of time to make an impact on these kids. And I know sometimes things take long, but I think that we owe it to the students in our district to do our best, to be ambitious about it, to not be ambivalent about it, but to be ambitious about it. And to go back to my opening comments, I think that education has the power to change the world. I really believe that. But I think it's an immense obligation for those of us that engage in that process. And I'm up for that obligation. And it's important to me, and it means a lot to me. So thank you all for coming and for participating yourselves. It really means a lot.
Urs Haltener.
And I'm up. I'm really humbled to have the opportunity to be present amongst my colleagues here and the formidable dialogue we've been able to have in kind of a meeting of minds in some ways. We're all the school district, and we can't forget that. We all have voice, and we have to exercise our voices. We are a school board and we can do, and we do aim to do better. And I certainly would welcome the opportunity to serve on the board one more time. I do have lived experiences across multiple levels of education as a Swiss citizen, as an American citizen, in schools both places. I have an associate's degree, I have a baccalaureate degree, I have a master's degree, and I have a doctoral degree. So I know what it's like when education treats us well, when boards make wise decisions, when we invest in young people. We just have to remember, this is about students. This is about student learning outcomes. This is about our very future. And at stake is the nation that we do love and the community that we do love. And by the way, I consider myself a bit of a townie. Even though I might not be that recognizable, I've lived here for 20 years. I will retire here. I only thought I'd stay here for 5 to 7 years. But my wife recently said, this is home. This is really home. So I'd welcome your vote if you can see your way. Thank you.
And Clint Moses.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Elizabeth's sitting over there. Sorry, that was a slip on my part. Once again, I'm Dr. Clint Moses. I'm running for school board. I'm very excited about it. A couple funny things that came up. First person I told I was interested in running for school board was my mom. You may remember I shared she was a mental health professional. So the first comment she had is, "Are you nuts?" So then after that I talked to a lot of people who really asked, well, what is your motive? What's your agenda? Why are you doing it? A lot of people know I'm busy. I have a lot of stuff going on, and that's true. But you know what? I really don't have an agenda. I'm not a single issue person. I do a good job bringing people together from different backgrounds, regardless what your beliefs are. Really, I guess I'd be lying if I didn't have an agenda at all. My agenda would be my 4 daughters that are in school. As I shared before, I have one in 4K and I have one that's a freshman in high school. So I really do have kids at all stages of life right now. I have a vested interest in their safety and the efficacy of our school district. I also want to see them move out of the house at some point. So that's another big deal, that they need to get a good education, have the same opportunities that I did. I love our kids very much. I love all of our kids here. I want the very best for them. That's why I'm doing it. I'm not doing it to get famous. One of my kids is calling me right now, actually. So once again, I do want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this on. This is very rare that you get the first opportunity to talk and the last. So I think I'm going to start applying this rule in our house and our office. It's kind of nice. So, but I appreciate all of you for showing up tonight, and I do ask for your support and your vote. I'll do my very best. Thank you.
Thank you all 6 of you who care enough to be here to try to get into this office. Thank you all for being here to listen to them and to ask them your questions. I am proud of Menomonie for bringing out this many people on a cold, cold March night. So this is a really good thing, and that's what we joined League of Women Voters in order to bring about. Thank you.
Thank you.